When 30-year-old Hannah Kobayashi landed in LAX, her disappearance marked a national search, one that tragically ended with her own father taking his life during this search expedition. For weeks, no one knew where Hannah Kobayashi had went, but there was a twist. Hannah Kobayashi had actually gone to Mexico on foot. Today, we are going to be unpacking the story of the missing person, or voluntarily missing person, Hannah Kobayashi. I personally was very invested in this missing persons case. I actually was a part of various different Facebook groups that were looking for Hannah Kobayashi, were looking for any new details that was going to be shared by the family or by the sheriff's department. So if you guys are ever investigating the story on your own, just know that you will see me there in those threads, in those Facebook groups, etc., etc. All right, you guys, you know we love breaking this down with a timeline, so let's start to take a look at the events as they transpired last year in November and also December when Hannah Kobayashi originally went missing. On November 12th, the family filed a missing persons report for Hannah Kobayashi. I'm going to show you guys that missing persons report. You can see there's a couple of images of her shared. There's also mention of her having tattoos on her body. And most importantly, the last day that she was seen was on November 11th. Now, it is important to note Hannah Kobayashi is originally a resident of Hawaii, so she was actually only in LAX on a connecting flight on her way to New York, and this happened on November 8th. Now, what the greater public did not know was that on November 8th, Hannah Kobayashi had actually been traveling with 3 other individuals. This is going to be very important later on, but I'm going to skip this detail just for now. We'll just assume that we are there on November, and we only know that Hannah Kobayashi was supposed to make a flight from LAX to New York on November 8th. Now, what we were also told as a public was that Hannah missed this connecting flight. The reason why this becomes a question and a contentious issue later on is because, like I said, there were 3 other people traveling with Hannah at this time, and they made that connecting flight. Then on November 9th, the next day, Hannah attended a book signing event at the Grove, again in Los Angeles, California. On November 10th, Hannah attended an event at the LeBron XX11, I'm sorry, I do not know that number, trial experience, which was also held at the Grove. Hannah also shared an image of this event on her Instagram page, and on this Instagram post, she tagged the New York Times, and then she also, as you could read from this Instagram post, the message that is displayed there on that poster. Nike is proceeding in reliance upon this notice and your consent in connection with its production activities here. If you do not wish to give such consent, do not enter this area. If you do come into range of the camera or the sound recording equipment, you will be deemed to have consented to this notice and waived any and all claims you may have. Now, this was a very eerie image because of the context of Hannah Kobayashi missing to the public at this time. A lot of people read into this, including myself, because it was a very eerie thing to post. Hannah is normally posting stuff more in relation to spirituality, artsy, and also it seemed to even foreshadow a little bit of this sense of being watched by the public. What also became very intriguing about this was that actually there was a YouTuber who posted a video, and in the background of that video they actually were able to capture a photo of Hannah Kobayashi attending this event, and this was caught by basically internet sleuths who spotted Hannah in the background of this YouTube video. Now, it was during this time at the beginning of November when the family started to appear on various different news broadcasts. This started to get public attention very, very quickly because the family also shared some of Hannah's last text messages on those days. Remember, November 8th to the 11th. So I'm going to read to you guys some of those text messages. All right, so Hannah texted her family, "Hi loves, I just finished a very intense spiritual awakening. I'm charging my phone and heading back to the airport to get to New York City. I might need some help getting there. It's a long story. I'll keep you posted. I think I still have my hotel room." In another set of messages, you can see there's a little bit more franticness in Hannah's messaging. She says, "I have stuff of value here." Her friend messages back, "You can go to the police, to the DMV. There are resources." Hannah says, "I just need to rest and I'll think better." The friend says, "Yeah, I'm really confused." Hannah says, "But it's very complicated." The friend says, "Did you get catfished?" Hannah says, "Matrix underworld shit, girl. This is way beyond me." The friend responds, "Did you get catfished by some dude you were talking to on the internet?" "No, we met. I can't explain all of it. Just please be open with this, please." In another set of text messages here, Hannah is saying, "I might go to a homeless shelter." The friend says, "You should go back to Maui. I literally can't, love. You shouldn't be spending money to continue traveling. You have a home and you need to get back to it. Yes, you can. Where's your ID?" I have it and my passport. Go buy a plane ticket to Maui. It's a really long story, hun. I can't help if I don't know what's going on. If you have your ID, you can buy a ticket. Go to the counter at Hawaiian Airlines. Now, at this time, Hannah actually does go back to LAX briefly. She is seen on camera footage here, and also she's described by the employees at LAX that she has some kind of not an altercation, but she seems frustrated at a situation, and then she eventually leaves. So we know that she was not able to rebook her flight to New York City. She leaves for whatever reason, and that is kind of the last that the public sees her, or at least that there is like video footage that the public has access to. What we know from the family's account, apparently on November 11th, the family sees surveillance footage of Hannah leaving the Pico Metro station in Los Angeles, and she is seen with another man leaving the station. And I'm going to show you this clip of her aunt Lori, who is describing this footage.
Has the family been able to look at any of the video? Because, you know, as a family member, you can tell if someone's acting strange or if something is up.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, we don't want to hinder the investigation because it seems like the investigators are really starting to take us seriously now, which we are so grateful for. But we can tell you, what we can tell you is that it made us extremely alarmed to the point where we started sounding the alarm as loud as we could.
What, after seeing the video, you mean?
Yes.
Now, from Aunt Lori's description, you might get the picture that Hannah is under major distress. She's maybe drugged, she's maybe under the influence, she's maybe being trafficked, and the family continues to purport this claim consistently throughout this time. Now, this is where I personally became invested in this story, because I was like, wait, I live in Los Angeles. I know the Pico Metro station. I love taking the metro to different places. For the most part, the Pico Metro station is a heavily populated area, and I was very surprised to hear that Hannah Kobayashi was potentially kidnapped from that station. Again, this was the way the family was describing this encounter with this stranger. However, as more and more time passed, we started to get more information in regards to this story. Now, I want to read to you guys, there is an article here by People Magazine that apparently interviewed the individual that was with Hannah, and then also compiled some of the details from that last encounter. But this came pretty much a month after those initial reports by the family, those initial kinds of red flags that were shared to the public were made. All right, so according to this article, it says, it's already in the news that she's with this male who's scary and she's in big trouble, Lieutenant Doug Oldfield tells People. For a while, he was the last person to have seen her when we didn't know where she was, he says. So we did have to spend a few days on this to ensure that nothing bad happened, he says. Oldfield says investigators were able to track the man down only days after Kobayashi was first reported missing, and in the course of their work subsequently confirmed a story about the time they spent together, including through video footage and the man's own statements. All right, so just to pause right there, I want to highlight that note, which is that the man was tracked down days after he was last spotted with Hannah Kobayashi. And this becomes important because it's a major discrepancy from what the story the family tells the public is. Because they basically, all the way up until the beginning of December, claimed that Hannah Kobayashi was with this huge, scary man, and like that he apparently was like drugging her maybe, and that maybe he trafficked her, and it made them sound the alarm bells as loud as they could. But according to this reporting, the police spoke with this person shortly after they were able to identify him, which also meant that the family most likely knew that this person was not a suspect in this crime. But that didn't stop the family. On November 24th, a very tragic thing happened in the Kobayashi case, which is that Hannah's biological father, Ryan Kobayashi, committed suicide near the LAX parking structure. I do want to note here that according to some sources that know the family, Ryan Kobayashi actually was not very close to his biological daughters. Hannah also has a sister by the name of Sydney Kobayashi, and it seemed as though there was kind of an estranged relationship there. So I don't know if it was maybe father's guilt, if there was information. Again, what we find in this case is that there was a lot of information the family did know that the public did not know. So we don't exactly know if the father really did, at the time of his death, believe that his daughter was in Skid Row, just because basically, as I read to you guys, that report by People that talks about that individual that was with Hannah. And I don't point that out to speak ill on the death of Ryan Kobayashi, because it is definitely a tragedy either way you spin it. But I think it definitely raises questions. It raises questions in terms of what exactly was the level of information that Ryan Kobayashi was aware of at the time. Throughout this month or 2 month investigation, we slowly start to see factions of the family break down. So initially at the beginning of November, when Hannah initially goes missing, we see her aunt Lori, her father Ryan Kobayashi, who are on these different media outlets talking about her disappearance. We actually don't really see that much of Hannah's biological sister and her mother appear, but they are doing their own investigations at home. As the time progresses, basically the two sides of the family start to kind of have a public brawl with one another, where Hannah's biological mother and the sister Sydney Kobayashi are saying basically like, we've asked Aunt Lori not to speak publicly about this case, but she is still going online on her TikTok accounts. And I know for the individuals that helped investigate this case, a lot of them are kind of torn between both sides. I see sides where they find the activity or the behavior of Hannah's mother and Sydney to be a little bit questionable, and then there's others who find Lori and Ryan Kobayashi to be a little bit questionable. Now, just to describe those two things very briefly, one has to do with the GoFundMe account that the family opened up. Now, this GoFundMe account was able to raise $47,000 to look for Hannah Kobayashi, and because Hannah Kobayashi at some point became known to be a voluntarily missing person, it struck the family, or struck the public as odd that the family would keep this money or not disclose where this money exactly is going to. But I have seen, personally myself, I've seen Sydney Kobayashi outline exactly where the money's gone to. So I think that it is very possible that the money was actually spent on searching for Hannah Kobayashi. Also, I did see where Sydney did share with everybody that they could request a refund for their donation if they wanted to. So I don't necessarily know if there was a right or wrong way to go about dealing with this money, but it seemed as though she tried her best to be as transparent as possible. All right, so it is not until November 26th that the police report Hannah as a voluntary missing person. Now, their reason for doing this is because they were able to identify footage at that Union bus station where Hannah Kobayashi was seen with her passport buying a ticket. And this ticket was believed to go down to San Isidro so that Hannah could then on foot cross the border into Tijuana, Mexico. Now, I'm going to show you guys an image of Hannah Kobayashi at the Union Station. You can see this is her pink luggage, and there is her passport being highlighted. At this same police conference, the police was able to confirm that they were able to identify border crossing footage of Hannah Kobayashi crossing the border on foot. So you might be asking yourself, why did Hannah Kobayashi even go missing in the first place? Why did she travel to LAX and then miss her connecting flight purposefully to New York? And the reason is going back to the beginning of the video where I mentioned those three individuals that were traveling with Hannah Kobayashi. Just to give you guys some names here, so Hannah is traveling with her ex-boyfriend whose name is Amun, and then they're traveling with another couple whose name is Alan and Marianne. So Alan and Marianne are together, Hannah and Amun are together, or at least they're actually exes at the time of this flight. And I want to read to you guys from this report from Daily Mail. It says, she wasn't on that flight by herself. She was on her way to the Big Apple alongside her new green card husband, Argentina native Alan Kakase, in a bid to hoodwink immigration officials into believing their marriage was genuine. I'm going to read ahead. This messy love square all on one plane together was only possible because Kakase had allegedly given Kobayashi $15,000 with the promise of a similar sum once the immigration documents that allowed him to stay in the United States were issued. The ruse of their sham marriage was already in the works after they tied the knot in October. Pictures of the ceremony were shown to Kobayashi's colleagues at Up in Smoke, the Maui smoke shop where she worked. But Kakase believed that pictures of him with Kobayashi, perhaps in front of the Empire State Building in Central Park, on Broadway, or by the Statue of Liberty, would be enough to persuade immigration officials that their marriage was real. All right, just to skip ahead here, it says, her coworkers also divulged that her cash cows in the form of Kakase and his girlfriend were also a point of contention for the formerly missing woman who didn't want either of them coming on this trip. Kobayashi supposedly told them she didn't want to waste time taking photos, but would reluctantly sacrifice one day of her weekly planned vacation to satisfy their wishes. And then there was Marianne, who Kobayashi had a recent fight with, revolving around her jealousy of marrying her boyfriend Kakase. I do remember Hannah saying that the girlfriend had an issue with her, Desiree said, and Hannah was like, girl, I'm not trying to steal your man. This is an arrangement we all talked about beforehand. Do you guys understand what happens here? So Hannah Kobayashi makes an arrangement with her boyfriend for them to marry another pairing or couple where each of them are going to take about $30,000. At some point, her and her boyfriend break up, and there's also tensions between Hannah and the other girlfriend of the girl that of the green card husband that she is going to be marrying. But she's like, girl, I'm not trying to get married. This is just an arrangement. This is just for the money, allegedly. And at some point, there is some kind of chasm between these two groups, and Hannah breaks off. She does not end up going to New York City. According to the family, more specifically Aunt Lori, who it seems as though they have the closest relationship after this entire endeavor, is that Hannah Kobayashi did not know of the search that was going on while she was in Mexico. She did not know of her father's passing. She did not know anything when she left Mexico. And according to police reports, it also seems as though Hannah Kobayashi left her phone in Los Angeles when she left to Mexico. You could drive yourself crazy from literally just picking apart this story, because also during the time of her known disappearance in November, we didn't actually hear publicly from Hannah's ex-boyfriend, Amun, and the other couple that was part of this flight. Now, it obviously makes sense now why we didn't hear from these people, because they were ultimately doing something illegal and they didn't want to out themselves and say, hey, we were actually on our way to go take these fake photos due to our green card marriage. They were not going to out themselves for it. But it was odd that we later found out there were multiple people on the plane with her. Again, this was likely information that the family was aware of at the time of her going missing. They were probably aware of very early on that Hannah Kobayashi was involved in some kind of immigration scam. Whether or not the boyfriend, or the ex-boyfriend should have helped in finding her, it seemed like he wasn't exactly worried about her being missing, probably due to the way that this group had probably left off their last conversation with Hannah. But what we do know is that most likely, like I said, the family was aware of the circumstances around her disappearance, but they didn't release that information to the public. Instead, they made it seem as though the last person that was with her at this Pico metro station that actually helped her get to Union Station was this major danger to her. On December 11th, Hannah Kobayashi allegedly made contact with her family. Specifically, it seemed as though her aunt Lori had been able to find her physically in Mexico. And then Hannah ended up speaking to her sister, Sydney Kobayashi, and also to her mother over the phone. Then it wasn't until December 15th that Hannah re-entered the United States, and we see this photo of her reuniting with, again, her aunt Lori. The last that we have seen from Hannah has been actually this month. Hannah shared a public statement on her social media account on Instagram, and I'm gonna play for you guys that clip right now.
To say how grateful I am for everyone, every single person who dedicated time and energy into looking for me. And I just want to say thank you. It means the world to me. Every day is such a gift, especially after such loss and pain.
For me personally, my lasting feeling on this is that if Hannah did not know that there was a search for her, that her father had passed away, then it's a very horrible situation how everything transpired. But we have to just be happy that Hannah is in fact safe and she's back home, because that was ultimately the entire mission of looking for Hannah. We just wanted to see that she was going to be safe. Obviously, as more and more details came out, I can understand why the public is disgruntled by this information, but ultimately, she is safe. Now, I do believe that the family is guilty of intentionally misrepresenting information to the public that actually caused a lot of people to unproductively search for Hannah for weeks on end. Like I said, I personally was invested in the story. I was looking up details, trying to see if I could find information on Hannah, trying to see if I can help the family in any way. And for us to later find out and realize that the family actually had very important information about Hannah's whereabouts that would have actually assisted people in being able to better locate her. Now, the last thing I want to leave you guys with is this mention of Hannah at the time of her disappearance was basically that this was very uncharacteristic of her, that she didn't normally do something like this. Actually, people that knew her in high school allegedly claimed that Hannah had actually ran away similarly when she was a high school student. Now, Hannah has hinted that she will be sharing the full story of her disappearance soon. Low-key, I do feel as though this is most likely in the form of a Netflix series or some kind of documentary, because it was a pretty big story, and actually there were so many twists and turns related to this case that I hope that there is actually some kind of documentary, just because I would like to see full investigation done on this. And I would love to see Hannah just being honest about the circumstances surrounding her disappearance, and just showing appreciation also for the people that helped to look for her, and also taking accountability of her actions. I think that's really what the public wants to be able to see from her. We're ultimately, of course, very happy that she is sound and safe, but there was a huge usage of people's personal resources and also police resources to find her, that I think they just want to see, Hannah take a little bit of ownership for that. I will leave you guys on that note, but I want to thank you guys so much for watching today's video. Bye, everybody.